Carria limped through the skeletal remains of what had once been the pride of the luminary colony. Twisted metal groaned in the artificial wind, the environmental systems still functioning despite the destruction that had torn through the domed city. 3 cycles had passed since she'd eaten anything substantial, and her once muscular frame had grown gaunt, the iridescent markings on her bronze skin dimmed from their former brilliance. She paused, listening intently, her 4-fingered hand gripping the makeshift knife fashioned from debris. The hunting parties had been more persistent lately. It seemed her former commander, General Dravos, wasn't content to let her die slowly of starvation or exposure. No, a traitor deserved a public execution, especially one who had once been his most decorated officer. Should have just followed orders, she muttered to herself, wincing as she adjusted the crude bandage on her thigh. The wound was healing poorly, another reminder of her weakened state. The memory of that night still haunted her, the terrified faces of the human settlers, hands raised in surrender, as Dravos ordered their extermination. They collaborated with the Halaxian rebels. He had told his troops. Every last one must be purged. But Carria had seen the children among them, had recognized the look of innocent confusion in their eyes, and something in her had broken, or perhaps awakened. She had turned her weapon on her fellow soldiers instead, creating enough chaos for some of the humans to escape before she too fled into the ruins. Now she was just another piece of discarded wreckage in this broken place. A distant rumble shook the ground, drawing her attention skyward. Through gaps in the dome's fractured panels, she watched a small craft trailing smoke and fire, plummeting toward the surface several kilometers away. Another victim of the ongoing conflict, no doubt. Carria hesitated. The crash site would draw attention, military attention, but it might also provide supplies, possibly even medicine for her infected wound. The risk was substantial, but survival often demanded such calculations. Elijah Kaplan regained consciousness upside down, still strapped into the pilot's seat of his research vessel. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, and every breath sent shooting pain through his ribs. Outside the shattered view screen, the alien landscape of Lumina IV spread out in eerie twilight. Comms offline. Life support at 17%. Hull integrity compromised. The ship's AI reported with inappropriate serenity. "Thanks for the update," Eli groaned, releasing his harness and crashing unceremoniously onto the ceiling, now the floor, of the inverted craft. "Any good news?" Emergency beacon activated. However, signal strength is insufficient to penetrate atmospheric interference. Eli dragged himself to his feet, taking stock of the situation. His engineering team had been on a routine mission to repair communications relays near the demilitarized zone when they'd been hit, whether it was the luminary forces or their Halaxian enemies who had shot them down hardly mattered now. The rest of his team had evacuated in the escape pods, but someone had needed to pilot the damaged craft away from the populated sectors. That someone had been him. Now he was alone on a hostile moon, in the middle of someone else's war. Gathering what supplies he could salvage, a medical kit, some ration packs, tools, and a portable energy cell, Eli prepared to abandon the wreck. The standard protocol was to stay with the ship, but the smoke column from his crash would draw attention. The wrong kind of attention. As he stepped out onto the lunar surface, the desolation took his breath away. In the distance, the broken dome of what had once been a thriving colony reflected the dim light of the gas giant hanging low in the sky. Something moved among the ruins, a flicker of movement that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Eli felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He wasn't alone here. And survival just became a much more complicated equation. The beacon was nearly operational when the patrol found them. Carria sensed them first, her warrior's instincts flaring. "Down," she hissed, pulling Eli to the floor as pulse fire shattered the wall behind them. "Traitor," a voice called in the luminary tongue. "Surrender and your death will be quick." 4 soldiers advanced through the rubble, members of Carria's former unit, their armor bearing the same insignia she once wore with pride. "Can you complete the beacon?" Keria asked, her voice suddenly calm, the focused clarity of battle washing over her. Eli nodded. "I need 10 minutes. "We'll give you 15, she promised, pressing her salvage blaster into his hands. "Know how to use. Point and shoot," he confirmed grimly. "Stay low. Finish signal." Keria's hand lingered on his, fingers intertwining briefly. "Find me after." Before he could respond, she was moving, drawing their attacker's attention with deliberate noise in the opposite direction. Eli crawled to the beacon, hands steady despite fear churning inside him. Distant weapons fire punctuated his frantic work. Every blast made him flinch, wondering if Keria still lived, forcing himself to focus on the task. 9 minutes later, the final connection was made. The beacon hummed to life, its signal broadcasting their location to any human vessels within range. Eli grabbed the blaster and moved toward the sounds of conflict. He found Keria cornered in what had once been a storage facility, exchanging fire with 2 remaining soldiers. Blood, darker than human red, stained her side. Without hesitation, Eli fired, catching one attacker by surprise. The distraction gave Keria her opening. She lunged forward, taking down the final soldier with brutal efficiency. She turned to Eli, chest heaving, eyes wild with battle fury. "Signal. Broadcasting," he confirmed. "They'll find us now." Relief and something else flashed across her face. She swayed suddenly, adrenaline fading as her wound made itself known. Eli caught her before she fell, guiding her to shelter, his medical kit already in hand. "Not deep," she insisted as he dressed the injury. "We'll heal." "It could have been worse," Eli murmured, hands gentle but trembling with delayed reaction. "You could have." Keria silenced him by capturing his face between her palms. "Chose this fight," she reminded him. "My choice." The intensity between them crackled like static electricity. Months of isolation, weeks of building trust, and the raw aftermath of combat dissolved the last barriers between them. Their first kiss was awkward, alien anatomies seeking common ground. The second was better. By the third, they had discovered harmony. They came together in a makeshift shelter, surrounded by the ruins of war, finding in each other something neither had expected to discover in this desolate place: connection. Their lovemaking was tender exploration and desperate affirmation of life, cultural differences forgotten in the language of touch and breath, and whispered encouragements. Afterward, lying together beneath a thermal blanket, Keria traced patterns on Eli's skin. "What happens when ship comes?" she asked, the future suddenly real and looming. "You come with me," Eli said without hesitation. "As what?" "Refugee. Specimen. Trophy. As whatever you want to be." He kissed her forehead. "Partner, maybe. If you wanted." Keria was silent, weighing possibilities against probabilities. "Your people may not accept." "Some won't," he acknowledged. "Does that matter more than what we want?" She had no answer, but nestled closer to him, taking comfort in his warmth as they waited for rescue or renewed attack, whichever came first. The human rescue vessel appeared in Lumina's sky 3 days later. By then, word of the beacon had spread. General Dravos himself led the final assault on their position, determined to recapture the traitor and eliminate any witnesses. "They're jamming communications," Eli reported grimly as another barrage shook their shelter. "The ship won't be able to pinpoint our exact location." Keria checked her weapons charge, nearly depleted. "Need to reach clearing. Signal visually." "There's a flare gun in my emergency kit," Eli said. "But we'd be exposed." "I go. Draw fire away. You signal ship." Eli grabbed her arm. "That's suicide, Keria." "Survival has price," she replied, the warrior resurging. "Sometimes price is sacrifice." "No." His decision was instant and absolute. "We go together. 2 targets are harder to hit than 1. Outside, Dravos's voice echoed through an amplifier. "Keria Velnaren, your human cannot save you. Surrender now, face judgment with honor." Caria stiffened at the use of her full name, memories of her former life rushing back. "Was time I believed in his virgin of honor," she whispered. "And now? Now I know better." She touched Eli's face tenderly. "Found something worth more." They slipped out through a hidden passage Caria had discovered during her months in the ruins. The clearing lay 50 meters ahead, an eternity of open ground with minimal cover. "Ready?" Eli asked, flare gun clutched tightly. Caria answered by pressing her lips to his. "Quick, fierce. Run fast, engineer." They broke cover together, zigzagging toward the clearing as pulse fire erupted behind them. Halfway across, Caria cried out, stumbling as a shot grazed her leg. Eli pulled her up, supporting her weight. "Leave me," she gasped. "Not a chance," he growled, practically dragging her forward. They reached the clearing as the rescue ship appeared overhead, a sleek silhouette against luminous perpetual twilight. Eli fired the flare, its red streak painting the sky. Behind them stood General Dravos, flanked by his remaining soldiers, weapons raised. "How noble," the general sneered in Standard, ensuring Eli understood. "Throwing away your life for this traitor." "She's worth 100 of you," Eli replied, positioning himself between Caria and their attackers. Dravos laughed coldly. "You know nothing of her crimes, human." "I know she chose mercy when you chose slaughter," Eli said. "I know which choice takes real courage." The general's finger tightened on his trigger, just as the rescue ship's spotlight illuminated the standoff, its weapon systems locking onto the luminary troops. "This isn't over," Dravos warned, reluctantly signaling his soldiers to withdraw. "The traitor will never know peace." "She already does," Eli replied, feeling Caria's hand slip into his. The ship landed moments later, armed personnel securing the area while medics rushed forward. As they were guided aboard, Caria hesitated at the threshold, looking back at the ruined landscape that had been her prison and home. "Regrets?" Eli asked softly. "No," she decided, "but uncertainty." "That's normal," he assured her. "We'll figure it out together, one day at a time." In the ship's medical bay, as doctors treated their injuries, Caria and Eli remained side by side, fingers intertwined. Representatives from various human agencies would have questions. There would be debriefings, cultural adjustments, prejudices to overcome. The path ahead was neither simple nor guaranteed. But as the ship broke Lumina's atmosphere, carrying them toward the stars, Caria watched Eli speaking with the rescue team, advocating for her, planning their future. She thought of how fate had brought them together amid ruins and despair, how they had built something precious from the wreckage. "Found reason," she murmured to herself in her native tongue, completing a thought begun months ago in solitude. Back then, she had searched for a reason to continue living when everything had been taken from her. She hadn't expected to find it in a human engineer with gentle hands and unshakable principles. She hadn't expected to find love. But sometimes, Caria reflected as Eli returned to her side, the universe's greatest gifts emerged from its deepest wounds. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. Caria took it, stepping forward into uncertainty with newfound courage. "Ready," she confirmed. For whatever came next, they would face it together. The ruins provided little shelter from Lumina Ivy's bitter nights. Eli huddled against a partially collapsed wall, the portable heater from his survival kit barely keeping hypothermia at bay. His training hadn't prepared him for this. Combat zones were for soldiers, not civilian engineers. A scraping sound froze him mid-motion. He wasn't alone. "I know you're there," he called out, voice steady despite his racing heart. "I'm unarmed, just a stranded engineer." Silence answered him. Then a shadow detached itself from the darkness. The luminary woman stepped into the dim light, her movements betraying injury despite obvious attempts to conceal it. She was tall and lean, with bronze skin marked by faded iridescent patterns. Her eyes, large and entirely black except for rings of amber, studied him with predatory intensity. "You crashed," she stated in halting human standard. Her hand never left the crude blade at her hip. Yes, my ship was shot down. Eli remained still, recognizing the danger in sudden movements. I'm Elijah Kaplan. Eli. She said nothing, but her gaze dropped to his supply pack. Understanding dawned on Eli. Are you hungry? He reached slowly for a ration pack. Here, take it. The luminary woman hesitated, suspicion warring with desperate need. Finally, hunger won. She snatched the package, retreating several steps before tearing it open. She devoured the contents with desperate efficiency. What's your name? Eli asked when she finished. Another long pause. Caria, she finally offered, the word seeming to cost her something. You're injured, Eli observed, noticing her favoring her right leg. I have medical supplies. Why help enemy? Caria's words were clipped, wary. I'm not a soldier. I repair things. Eli gestured to the wound. I could repair that. Not broken thing, she snarled, but her defiance lacked conviction. Everyone needs help sometimes, Eli said softly. Even warriors. Something flickered in those alien eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. Slowly, painfully, Caria lowered herself to sit across from him, extending her injured leg with reluctance. Help, she conceded, the single word holding both command and vulnerability. As Eli cleaned and dressed her wound, a deep gash showing early signs of infection, he spoke quietly about his mission, his team, filling the silence to distract her from the pain. Gradually, her rigid posture eased slightly. Others come for you, she asked when he finished. I need to boost my beacon's signal first. The crash damaged it. Caria was silent for a long moment. No place. Has parts maybe. Old communications array. She pointed toward the far side of the ruined dome. But dangerous. Military patrols. Why would you help me? It was Eli's turn to be suspicious. Caria's expression hardened. Not helping you. Need off-world transport. A simple transaction, her eyes said. Nothing more. Partners then, Eli suggested, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Caria stared at the offered hand before tentatively pressing her palm against his, the luminary equivalent. Until beacon works, she agreed. They sheltered together that night, wary strangers united by circumstance, neither fully trusting but both recognizing the cruel math of survival. As dawn broke, they gathered their meager supplies and headed deeper into the ruins, an unlikely alliance forged in desperation. Caria moved ahead, scout and protector in one, while Eli followed, watching her proud, wounded gait and wondering what had brought the luminary warrior to such straits. The question burned in his mind, but he sensed the answers would come at their own pace, if they came at all. 2 weeks into their uneasy partnership, the communications array was taking shape among the ruins. Eli worked tirelessly, repurposing salvaged components, while Caria stood guard, her health improving daily with proper nutrition and medication. Hand me that coupling, Eli requested, pointing to a component near her feet. Caria passed it without comment. She'd grown less taciturn lately, though conversation remained functional rather than friendly. You were military, Eli observed, not for the first time seeking to bridge the silence between them. Was, she confirmed, her standard improving through daily use. Elite guard. What happened? The question had been avoided for days, but confined together in this small space, working side by side, barriers were gradually weakening. Caria's fingers traced the dim markings on her forearm, once vibrant symbols of rank and honor. Refused order. To kill human families. Non-combatants. Eli's hands still on the circuitry. You defied orders to save civilians. Some escaped. Not enough. Her voice held old pain. Commander called me traitor. Stripped rank. Hunted since. You did the right thing, Eli said quietly. Right thing, Caria repeated, testing the concept. Cost everything. Their eyes met across the makeshift workbench, understanding flowing between them. Eli had never known anyone who had sacrificed so much for principle. "You have honor," he told her, the words carrying more weight than intended. Something shifted in her expression, softened. "Your mate, family?" she asked, changing subjects but creating a new intimacy with personal questions. "No mate," Eli smiled. "My work keeps me moving too much. Family's back on Earth. Parents, 2 sisters. Miss them. Every day." Carria nodded. "Had brother, sister, both soldiers, both dead now." Impulsively, Eli reached across the space between them, touching her hand. "I'm sorry." She didn't pull away. Her skin was warmer than human normal, textured with fine ridges invisible to the eye, but detectable by touch. "Teach me," she said suddenly. "Teach you what?" "Engineering. To help with Beacon." They began working side by side after that, hands occasionally brushing as Eli explained each component. Carria proved a quick study, her military precision transferring well to technical work. Days blurred into nights as they labored together, sharing meals, sharing stories. One evening, as twin moons rose over the wasteland, Carria spoke of her homeworld, of crystal forests and floating cities, of the art and music lost to decades of war. In return, Eli described Earth's oceans, the feel of rain, the sound of birds at dawn. "Would show you these things," he said, fatigue lowering his guard, "when we get off this rock." Carria studied him, her head tilted in that alien way. "Why care what happens to enemy soldier?" "You're not my enemy, Carria. Never were." She moved closer then, hesitant but deliberate, reaching to touch his face with cautious fingers. "Different," she murmured, tracing the curve of his cheek, his jaw. "But not so different." Eli remained perfectly still, heart thundering as her exploration continued. When her fingers brushed his lips, he caught her hand gently, pressing a kiss to her palm. Carria's eyes widened, but she didn't withdraw. Instead, she leaned forward, experimental and uncertain, until their foreheads touched, an intimate gesture among her kind. They remained that way, breathing the same air, balanced on the edge of something neither had anticipated, but both now recognized. Whatever came next would change everything.